1,
2,
3,
4, 5,
6.
Over time, it is natural for ideologies to transform and evolve, but many of the former philosophies instituted by humanity have been worked for convenience. The idea that all life is precious has been disregarded multiple times throughout history, recently through the Roe v. Wade case. Abortions for the sake of convenience have plagued our country. With the recent Dobbs v. Jackson case, the Roe v. Wade ruling, decided in 1973, has been overturned. But controversies have arisen with this decision, leaving the question, was overturning Roe v. Wade justified? Many, including the Supreme Court justices, have argued that establishing the legalization of abortion as a federal law has taken away states' rights. The justices who wrote Roe themselves also stated that in the law that it should remain flexible, likely needing to be revised in order to adapt to new scientific discoveries. Though many argue that the legalization of abortion is necessary since the fetus is not alive and therefore undeserving of rights, scientists and biologists consistently agree that life begins at conception. Contrary to popular arguments against the overturning of Roe, an abortion procedure is not necessary for medical purposes. After spending several hours researching and studying this case and participating in a class debate, I agree that overturning Roe v. Wade was justified. Overall, overturning Roe returns power to the states, allowing people to decide at which degree they wish to protect prenatal life. To understand why Roe was overturned, it is first important to understand why it was established in the first place. Roe v. Wade was a 1973 court ruling on abortion rights. Jane Roe, who had an unplanned pregnancy, filed suit to challenge the abortion laws enforced in Texas, as abortion was only legal if the mother's life was at stake. And a doctor practicing in Texas also joined in on the case, additionally claiming that abortion laws were too vague to follow. In Roe v. Wade, our Supreme Court decided two things: that the Constitution upholds each individual's right to privacy to choose whether or not they want an abortion, and that abortion rights must be balanced in protecting life and health. According to Laura Tomei, Esquire, a senior legal writer, during a pregnant person's first trimester, the court held that a state cannot regulate abortion beyond requiring that the procedure be performed by a licensed doctor in a medically safe conditions. But during the second trimester, the court held that a state may regulate abortion if the regulations are reasonably related to the health of the pregnant person. During the third trimester of pregnancy, the state's interest in protecting potential life outweighs the right to privacy, and as a result, the state may prohibit abortions unless an abortion is necessary to save the life of the mother. Since Roe was established, many people have argued that it has taken away states' rights. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, former justice of the Supreme Court, claimed that with no measured motion, the Roe decision left virtually no state with laws fully conforming to the court's delineation of abortion regulations still permissible. The justices who wrote Roe themselves claimed that within the Roe decision, after years went by and science became more developed, that it may need to be overturned. And one of the fundamental flaws of Roe was that it stated that states could restrict abortion via the viability standard, which Harry Blackmun, who was the writer of Roe, set at 28 weeks. As stated in Roe, Blackmun offered a caveat. As science advances and the viability standard changes, the laws should also change accordingly. But this never happened, which is a flaw since the viability standard has obviously changed since this ruling was passed. New technology has been developed and has caused the viability for the fetus to be pushed earlier in gestation. Blackmun also stated that the state has a vested interest in protecting potential life. Thus, the state should be allowed to make legislation that reflects this interest. Therefore, as long as states can prove a rational basis for legislation, the people should be able to determine at what level they wish to protect prenatal life through voting in state legislatures. Overall, the courts gave too much power over the states. Overturning Roe returns power to the people. One of the main controversies and arguments surrounding the overturning of Roe v. Wade is that the fetus is not a person and is therefore undeserving of rights and value. The main claim is that life does not begin at conception, As science has developed, many textbooks are in agreement with the fact that life does begin at fertilization or very soon after. According to the Developing Human, Clinically Oriented Embryology, human development begins at fertilization when a male gamete unites with a female gamete to form a single cell, a zygote. This highly specialized totipotent cell marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. Prominent scientists and physicians have testified in front of the U.S. Senate saying that life does begin at conception. Professor Micheline Matthews-Ross, who is a professor at Harvard University Medical School, stated that it is incorrect to say that biological data cannot be decisive. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life does begin at conception. Our laws, one function of which is to preserve the lives of our people, should be based on accurate scientific data. Many other well-known scientists outside of the Senate have confirmed the same principle that life begins at conception. Dr. Landrum Shettles was one of the first people to explore sperm biology, fertility, and sterility. He is famous for discovering male and female producing sperms and has photos of them of preborn children in over 50 medical textbooks. He states, "I oppose abortion. I do so first because I accept what is biologically manifest, that human life commences at the time of conception, and second, I believe it is wrong to take an innocent human life under any circumstances. My position is scientific, pragmatic, and humanitarian." And in a study completed by Herodox Academy, 5,577 professors and postdocs were interviewed and surveyed on the question, do they believe that life begins? When does life begin? And as you can see, overwhelmingly, the vast majority, no matter where they land on the pro-life, pro-choice spectrum, all agree that life begins at fertilization. Few others agree that it either begins at pre-viability, viability, and birth, but the vast majority agrees that it begins at fertilization. Others argue that Roe v. Wade being overturned will put women's health at severe risk, since women with emergency health complications will not be able to undergo an abortion in certain states. However, in these situations where the mother's health gets truly at risk, there is no circumstance in which the fetus actually has to be intentionally terminated. If the mother's life is truly at risk, her pregnancy must end in some way. And this is typically necessary for women who suffer from high blood pressure, life-threatening diabetes, cancer, heart disease, injury, or various other complications. Though preterm delivery may inevitably result in the death of the fetus, this is not the same as the abortion procedure in itself. In other cases, medications that could be detrimental to the fetus may also be necessary to save the mother's life. If the fetus does die in this medication process, it is still not the same as an abortion procedure. In conclusion, overturning the 1973 court ruling that legalized abortion as a federal law was justified. Overturning it gave power back to the states, ultimately allowing the people to vote in legislature to determine at what degree they wish to protect potential life. Various medical professionals have agreed that life does begin at conception and is therefore deserving of value. In addition, despite various claims, abortion procedures were not necessary for medical complications. Overall, overturning Roe v. Wade is justified, and now we the people get to decide for ourselves and our state legislators at what measure we wish to protect potential life. So after being presented with this information, I urge each of you who is eligible to vote for what you reflect to be right. Your voice can be heard. Thank you.
1,
2,
3,
4, 5, 6,